Yeah, today's talk is by Murray Hutchings. It's a possum hunter from Ratahi, and Murray talks about the changing distributions of possums, the art of trapping a possum, poisoning possums, and the ecosystems that possums live in.
Can you just give us a little bit of background on how you started in the possum business?
Well, basically, every young New Zealander trapped possums at some stage, but I was lucky enough to, as a young guy, work with some pretty good guys. One was your dad, Andrew, that I followed around in the bush while he did big poison lines up in the Uera, and then I was lucky enough to work with another guy, Guy Terry Ellis, who was very, very productive, and his favourite saying was, "Come on, boy, time is money." And he'd done a lot of commercial trapping, so I learned a lot off him. And then from there on, I just carried on. In the 70s, I used to possum for the winter and then hunt for the summer. And I worked in various places. I've trapped basically from one end of New Zealand to the other. I've spent time down in, well, this is not in order, but I've spent from the bottom of, I've worked in the Catlins. I've worked quite a lot in the bottom of South Westland and the start of Fiordland. I've worked in Otago on some of the high country stations there. I've done a little bit up around Nelson, but not a lot there. And then I've done the Uera, I've done the pines around Tokoroa, the forest products pines there. I've done quite a lot around Turangi, around the Kaimanawas, the forestry there, the Mount Pihanga, Mount Tongariro, all of them, and poisoned all of them. And then I have done a lot around Matawai and quite a bit up the east coast, in the forests up the east coast around Tipuia, around that area. And then I've done the forests along 90 Mile Beach. So I've sort of been from the top to the bottom.
Yeah, that's a lot of country.
And then as the years went on and there was more government poisoning, 1080 poisoning came in, the cyanide became less effective after you've had 1080, and went back to trapping with leg hold traps, which I found over the years the most successful way to catch a possum. I've tried a lot of different kinds of kill traps, but the possums become aware of them very quickly. And with a leg trap set right, you can sometimes catch up to 20 possums without moving a trap, which is makes the job a lot easier.
It's a lot of country.
Yep. And in that, I've noticed the different breeds of possums.
Yeah.
And it's quite incredible. They have been the same for the last, well, I've seen it in the last 50 years, but I know guys that will be before me. I know a lot of the old buyers, and even the buyers today. Well, people don't realise, but there was a lot of different liberations of possums around New Zealand at different times from different places. And it appears, well, it's pretty obvious to me that those different breeds have not changed at all in the last 100 years since they were liberated. And 30 years ago when I was doing a lot of poisoning of big numbers, and the guys that run the North Island Fair Auction, I used to do bales of skins from Ratahi. I used to do bales of skins from the Kaimanawa Forest Park and behind Turangi. I do a bale of skins off Mount Tongariro and a bale of skins off Pihanga, and sometimes I do a bale of skins in the country they call a 42nd reverse, really. And I would take them down, keep them separate, take them down to the auctions to be graded. And the guy that was doing the grading has bought possum skins for ever. He was the main grader for Dalgiddy's, which run the big auctions in New Zealand for years. And he would open those bales and start grading, and he'd say, these are Whanganui River skins, which are a small grey skin. Then he would open a bale and he'd say, oh, these are Kaimanawa skins. Then he would open a bale and say, oh, these are from what I call a 42nd reverse, but in behind Ofonga. And they were a different skin again. And he would open these and he'd say, these skins are off Mount Pihanga, and he never got it wrong, only because he had travelled around for years and bought off these old trappers that lived in each area, and they just used to trap and take out their skins. And even nowadays, I sell to a tannery in Taranaki, and they'll say, I don't want any skins from Whanganui, they're too small, grey. Go to Marae, get those big skins, go up the East Coast. Or they said to me, go to Otago, we get the best skins out of Otago. The breeds are staying very much the same.
And how can you tell that? What are the
mainly the size of the possum,
yeah,
and the colour of the possum.
Yeah.
But there are other things as well, like where this guy used to pick up the Kaimanawa skin. It was a very similar size possum to the possum, say, on Tongariro, but the pelt is a bit lighter. The actual skin is a bit lighter, and that's how he used to pick up that they were Kaimanawa skins. There's just all these little, there's different shades of grey, like the Whanganui possum is, the Whanganui River possum is a smaller possum, and it's a nice, what they call a blue grey. It's a nice grey that they like. And when you go down towards Taihape Hunterville, there is a possum that is a pale grey, which is a gingery grey. It's a really small possum, and as far as selling skins go, they're valueless. Nobody wants them because the colour is horrible. You can pluck the fur out of them, but yeah, so there's all these different little traits, different colours, different sizes of possums right throughout New Zealand.
Yeah. And so some of the old possum fur traders would be able to identify accurately.
Even today,
yeah.
Even today, that where I sell most of my skins to a tannery in Taranaki, the guy that owns it hasn't been in the business for forever, but he knows exactly where he'll only buy off certain areas of New Zealand where he gets a big, heavy pelted, dark possum.
Yeah.
He will not buy off areas where it's a smaller grey possum or a ginger possum. They don't want them. Actually they do buy some greys, but they want big ones and they dye them. But they want those big darks, and so that's what I've done in the last 5 years. I've trap mainly up in Matawai and up the east coast just to chase those big possums for them.
Okay. Hey, well, I know you've got a few possum skins flying around here. I wonder.
Oh, well, I'll show you a few, but I haven't got any little grey possums here.
Yeah.
Now these are just some skins that I've had tanned because they're an unusual colour.
Yeah.
But this is what is called a slate or a rock possum, which is a black possum with a golden belly. They're a pretty skin. Now, most places you will get one of these in maybe 2,000 possums.
Yeah.
In a place where I was trapping in
I might
Fiordland,
just put it down flat so I can
yeah,
get a better shot here. But
in a place where I was trapping in Fiordland, I
yeah.
found a pocket of these things where I was catching 9 or 10 a day, and just in about a 5k area, and it really interested me. And so I went back 10 years later and trapped this area again, in the same area of 4 or 5k. I was catching 6 or 7 or of these rock possums a day. Once you get away from there, you're catching none. And that pocket of these rock possums, I know has stayed static for 10 years. I don't know how they got there. There's a lot of rumours that in the early in the 60s and the 70s, when there was a lot of meat hunters in there, the possum numbers were very low, and some guys say that some of the meat hunters let some of these possums go with the hope of establishing some nice skins. But I don't know whether that's true or not. But I do know that it's very rare to have a pocket of rock possums where you're catching a number of them every day. Everywhere else in the Uera, up and behind Ratahi, there is a reasonable amount of these rock possums, but the majority of the possums up there are a bigger dark possum like us. This is a big, nice dark possum, and that's the type of possum that people want. That's not a huge skin, but it's a nice furry dark colour is what they want, and that is a Matawai skin. It's probably about a 3/4 size Matawai possum, and if these possums around here where I live, a very large one would be about that big, and that's been like I've trapped around here for 50 years. I've trapped up in the Uera for 50 years. Those possums have stayed exactly the same. They haven't intermingled. They haven't changed colour.
So they're not moving around much, and they're not interbreeding between areas.
That's what I see. Yeah.
But is this accepted as a part of the science of possums? Do people know about this?
No, they don't.
Because I've never heard anyone tell
No,
me this
it's only like the skin buyers and a lot of the trappers.
Yeah.
The experienced trappers know the difference. Now, for example, down here, down the Mangapura Valley, Doc have done quite a lot of 1080 operations in there, and there's a side valley off it, the Waipapa Valley, and they've never poisoned it. And I said to the Doc guys, why are you not poisoned? Well, I said, I need a permit in there before you 1080 that. They said, we're not going to 1080 it. We're doing trials in there. We're doing trials to see what is the smallest 1080 bait to kill a possum.
Yeah.
And I said, why would you do trials on what is the smallest 1080 bait to kill a possum on the smallest possums in New Zealand? And they said, are they the smallest possums in New Zealand? I said, yeah, they are. They said, well, we didn't know that. A possum's a possum. But a possum isn't a possum.
Now, I'll just pause here for a second because this is quite a radical claim, and Murray is not just making the common observation that there are local variations in characteristics. He's observing that there are distinct, stable, localized breeds which are not interbreeding and not migrating across boundaries, and these have been stable over many decades. Now, he gives some striking examples of this localization of possum breeds next, so I think his evidence is very convincing, and I felt obliged to go and review some of the literature and see if he's right that Doc and the other agencies and the scientists are unaware of this phenomenon. And what I found is that he is right that the agencies are not aware of it. However, there have been a couple of genetic studies done recently which confirm what he's saying. And these studies only test a couple of local areas. One of them finds that there are stable local genetic variations in one area. Another study finds that there aren't any genetic variations in another area. So I put some references to this in the appendix at the end of this video.
And they'll say, I don't want any skins from Wanganui, they're too small, grey. Go to Marae, get those big skins. Go up the east coast. Or they said to me, go to Otago, we get the best skins out of Otago. So I thought, right, I know a guy that's got a station in Otago. I ring him up, can I come and do them? Yep. So I go there and the skins are not that good. And but his son-in-law on the farm used to be a possum trapper, and he said, no, the skins in Otago on the western side of the lake are really good, and the ones on the eastern side, they're smaller, and it's always been like that. So, and everywhere you go, there's a different skin. I go down the Turkana River, I did forests along there, around Hunterville. They're a horrible little wee ginger possum.
Okay.
And yet not far away in the Ruahine is a bigger 50% dark possum, but a lot bigger. And in straight lines, they're not far apart, but the possums are totally different breeds and different colours, different sizes. And I believe that, you know, if there was DNA taken from different areas of possums throughout New Zealand, you would find that they are a different possum. And there was a liberation of possums in Milford. It took them 100 years to get over the range into the Pike river area, which is it's not far, but possums never got there for nearly 100 years, and I see it more and more when I'm trapping now. A possum, when numbers get down, they'll breed twice a year because they stay in good condition. They can rear a joey and they wean it in October, November, and because they're in good body condition, they mate straight away. So they have another baby and they wean it again in March, April, and mate again. But if the numbers are up a bit, they'll only have one a year.
Only have the winter baby.
Only have the winter baby. They wean in the same in October, November, but it takes all summer to build up enough condition to get pregnant again, because they're quite skinny if the numbers are high. And I'm just working in an area now, but I've seen it time after time. I'm working a forestry boundary and a private block of bush. The forestry boundary has bait stations that are run by a contractor that fills them up. The private farmers had bait stations through it, but not consistently done. And so I'm trapping along the edge where these bait stations are, and I'm catching a reasonable amount of possum, but every female possum has a summer joey. I'm going back into the bush on this farm in a straight line, no more than 200 metres, and every possum I'm catching in there has no summer joey. So out here I'm catching maybe five, 6 days where the bait stations are before I have to move a trap. In there, well, say 300 metres max away, I'm catching 10 to 12 possums without moving a trap. The numbers are higher and the possums are not breeding on the summer joey in there. And to me it proves that the possum is not moving very far from its nesting sites. They don't like getting wet. And I do know that in January, February, March, when the weather's settled, really settled, I will catch sometimes up to 20 days without moving a trap. In the winter, when the weather's not settled, I won't catch that many days at all, because the possums will tend to move more when it's fine and settled, but they do not move these 25 k's a year in a juvenile possum that's been thought for many years. Otherwise they would have all become the same breed by now.
Yeah. So can I just ask you about the possum distributions in the North Island? The North Island is pretty well colonised with possums, isn't it?
Yep.
Pretty much everywhere. South Island, there's still regions that are...
No, South Island is colonised now, but it's
What about the bottom of Fiordland? There's still places without possums, are there? Oh.
Look, I've never worked the bottom of Fiordland. I've only worked the top of Fiordland.
Yeah.
And the top of Fiordland, like I said, it took 100 years, well, not quite 100 years for possums to come over into the pike. And those possums they lived on all the fringes around the river edges, around the creeks. They never established right up into they're there, but in very low numbers. And
the tops and the high country.
In the podocarp bridges up heading towards the top, they've stayed, but as time goes on, those numbers will build up. I went in there and I headed for the tops of these ridges thinking nobody's been here, and I could hardly catch a possum. I catch a few, but hardly any. And I thought, man, what have I done? And then I worked out they're living just around the fringes of the rivers where there's good feed in the fuchsia country. And I said to the dock woman from Te Anau, have you guys 1080'd all that top country? And she said, no. I said, well, I can't catch possums up there. They're all living around the fringes. She said, yeah, that's where they live here. But I put it down to them. They haven't been there long enough. They've only sort of been in there for the first few were coming in the late 70s, and now they've got more and more established. But I'd say they haven't built up enough numbers to expand into that. They're just living where they've got plenty of feed.
Yeah. But that's kind of the very edge of where they've got to.
Yep. Southwestland and Fiordland possums just hop in the river and swim across it. When you're trying to spotlight them and you think, I've got them cornered between the river and the bush.
Yeah.
they just see you hop in the river, swim across, jump out, shake themselves. Big rivers too, you know. Um, yeah, to me, it doesn't add up that the possum is moving down and bringing TB into areas. I believe farmers bring TB into areas and deer. Deer are big movers. The deer have spread far faster than possums, and and the deer, when we were aerial shooting in the Hauhongaro ranges back in the 70s, like 1 in every 10 deer we shot was full of TB.
Yeah, right.
And I've never seen that. I have seen TB in possums in the Hauhongaro ranges, but not like that. And I've gutted. I've processed over 100,000 possums for pet food, and
Right.
and I've never seen TB. Well, I tell a lie. I have seen TB in some from Hunterville, but from this area, all the Matawai East Coast area, I've never seen TB in a possum, and that's where you're gutting every one of them. You're looking at the offal,
Yeah.
and no, basically they're a pretty healthy animal. But I believe if there's TB in the area where they're living, they will pick it up.
I think farmers often, farmers think that TB's,
Well,
that possums
everybody
spread
everybody
TB, right?
thinks that possums spreading TB,
Yeah.
and it's been a big grey area because um, you know, places like the West Coast and the South Island where it's very wet and damp, the possums did have TB.
Right.
The Hauhongaro Ranges, which is very wet and swampy, there was a huge amounts of TB in the farming around there, the animals around there. But as I say, I believe that a possum is not a moving. You can prove it because the breeds haven't changed.
Yeah.
So they're not moving the way people think they are.
Have you been doing trapping for predator control, as opposed to selling the skins?
Look, most of my trapping is in forestries for predator control, but I don't get paid to do predator control. I get paid by the amount of skins and fur and pet food that I can sell.
Yeah.
So I have to be productive, otherwise I don't make any money.
So Doc or the forest owners let you run the trap lines,
Yeah.
and their motivation is predator control, is it?
Yeah, their motivation is to get rid of the possums, and a lot of the forestry blocks I run, I work in, not so much now, but years ago, I took tail tips off the skins and I supplied them tail tips. I tell a lie there. When the skins crashed in the 80s, when the skin prices crashed in the 80s before the fur came along, the forestry did pay me to catch possums.
Right.
But the part of the deal was I had to supply 1,000 tail tips a month to get my payment. So, yeah, it wasn't, they just paid me. If I had to catch 1,000 possums a month out of their forest, and then they paid me a retainer. That's what I try and work for every month. That's my target that I try and set.
1,000 a month.
Yeah. Even
That's a lot
now,
of possums.
I still do it. Like, well, the week before I rolled my bike, I did, I think, 9 days, and I averaged 70 a day over those 9 days. But it was good weather.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I say. This time of the year, you can catch a lot more possums when the weather's settled than you can in the winter when it's wet and the days are shorter.
Wow, that's a lot of possums from my memory of possum trapping. But
Well, you learn a bit after 50 years, ain't you?
yeah,